Welcome to A Better Divorce podcast, where we have conversations about the emotional, financial, and legal issues that are on your mind or should be on your radar if your goal is to keep your divorce out of court. I'm collaborative divorce attorney and mediator Andrea Vacca, and I know that how you divorce matters to your long-term well-being. That's why it's my mission to help you have a better divorce with as little acrimony as possible, so that you can create the best life possible on the other side of your marriage. Hello, everyone. I am very happy to welcome Dr. Gold Buscho back to the podcast today. Anne is a licensed clinical psychologist who specializes in family issues related to divorce and parenting, parenting planning, co-parenting, and her book is called The Parent's Guide to Bird Nesting, a child-centered solution to co-parenting during separation and divorce. And that was published in 2020. She's also has a regular column in Psychology Today, which I love the title. It's A Better Divorce, which I didn't know she had that title until after I had named this podcast A Better Divorce. So I love that we're on the same page here, Anne. So welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, when we last spoke in September of 2023, we discussed nesting or bird nesting. And if anyone is listening and is considering using that process for a temporary or long-term parenting arrangement, I encourage you to read the book and listen to that episode. But today we're going to focus on something a little different. We're going to discuss how you can help a friend have a better divorce. So you wrote about this in your column, Anne, in Psychology Today. It was called 8 Ways to Help a Friend Going Through Divorce. And when I saw that, I thought, I have to have you back on the podcast. So here we are. I'm looking forward to exploring the topic in more detail.
Yeah, there's so many ways that friends can support their friends going through divorce. And there are also a lot of ways where they can make it harder. So it's a great topic to explore.
It is. Whether you've been through divorce yourself or you've never been through divorce, you probably know somebody who is. So this is very common that we're friends and family who are divorcing. So what are some of the challenges that someone is facing when their friend is divorcing? And why is it hard to know what to do? What are the challenges?
Well, I think sometimes it depends on whether they see it coming or not. Sometimes friends are just completely shocked by a friend's decision to divorce. And other times, they've been a confidant and they maybe have anticipated this coming. So depending on that, their reaction may be different. I think people have very strong reactions to their friends divorcing, especially a close friend, because you may over-identify with a close friend. You may feel like the divorce is going to affect your relationship with the whole family. You may lose a friend. You may also worry that divorce is contagious, especially in my situation when I got divorced. I think I shared with you privately. My closest friend had also been contemplating divorce, but was too afraid to do it. And when I got divorced, she basically couldn't handle it and kind of abandoned me at a time when I really needed her. So I think people can have different responses. I had other friends that really stepped up and did things that I wouldn't have even known how to ask for. And those are things I think that friends can offer. Help with kids, help with just being a good listener, bringing over a meal, including a friend in social activities so that they don't feel like they get left out because they're the third wheel or something like that.
Right. So it's taking this personally or over identifying with somebody who's going through divorce, not wanting to catch it. those are really things that really go through someone's mind. It's very emotional to see somebody's marriage end and to separate yourself and say, how can I be a friend? How can I help this person? It's not about you at this point. It's about them, someone who's struggling with a very difficult decision that they made or was made for them.
Yeah.
So
I think some people think that divorce isn't as painful as it is. And if you decide to divorce somehow, it shouldn't be so painful for you. But that's not the case. And I think friends can be really surprised at the suffering of someone, even if the decision was theirs to leave the marriage. And that can be quite scary to friends. It can put people off. So it's a real test of friendship, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and just because you've decided to end the marriage doesn't mean it's an easy decision. It was it's incredibly painful. It probably took years to make the decision,
Right.
and you need all the support you can get.
Right.
So if you have a friend who is going through divorce or contemplating divorce, what are your best tips for what to do? What should they do?
It's funny, you find out who your friends are when you get divorced. You find
Okay.
out who's really going to step up. The friends that I think the one way to be, I mean, obviously, the most important way to be helpful is to be a good listener and to be there just to hold the emotions that your friend may express. I think it's not to give advice, it's not to um, coach them, it's not to tell them horror stories, it's to give emotional support and also maybe sometimes provide distractions, take them to a movie, take them out to coffee, um, share good books there, and practical help. I think a friend offering to pick up your kids at school or to bring over a dinner or to offer to help in some, if you have to leave the home, for example, offer help with packing, moving and resettling, logistical, really practical help. It can mean so much when you're in that situation.
Right. So, and if you don't know what to do, I guess you can ask, "How can I best help you right now?" If you're not sure,
That's
right?
always a good idea. Yeah, that's always a good idea.
And if you are looking for somebody to help you as a friend, are there certain well, I know we talk about, when there's couples, you're friends with a couple, right? And now they're divorcing. Like, who do you support at that point? What do you do? Like, any advice for that person who was friends with both people?
That's a tough one because in most divorces, friends feel like they need to figure out who's to blame and who's at fault and who's the most vulnerable and who they need to take sides with, right? Who they need to support. And so very often when couples are friends, it's like they have to lose one of them. The one that they've decided is either to blame or doesn't need their support. And it shouldn't really have to be that way. So I think if you're the person getting divorced and you can do this, it's helpful to say to friends, I don't need you to figure out who's at fault. It takes two to get to this place. I don't need you to give up your relationship with my soon to be ex, right? If I think that's hard for many people. People look for loyalty, people look for that kind of support. But um, it does happen that people feel like they need to take sides, and that's not a healthy thing for anyone.
It's not healthy, but it's how we are to our divorce culture. Just to get divorced, at least in New York, you have to sue your spouse for divorce. Even in an uncontested divorce where you both have agreed on all the terms, you have to bring a lawsuit,
Right.
me versus you.
Yep.
And so I think it's our culture to think somebody's at fault, someone did something wrong, someone's the bad guy here or the bad woman here, or whatever it may be, and I need to figure out who that is. Or
Yep.
that, like, something must have happened, right?
Right. The stigma of divorce carries on, and my hope is over the next generation or two that divorce will become more accepted as a sort of transition in life, but not necessarily a failure that someone needs to be blamed for.
Exactly. So so you talked about listening, um, just being someone who listens to what's happening, provide some logistic support, ask for how they can best help. Is there anything else to provide, of things to do that we didn't talk about? Anything else that somebody should be thinking about that they could do? Um, around the with maybe we've talked about the children. I don't know. Anything else? Or maybe we should talk about what not to do if somebody's contemplating or in the
There's
middle
a
of a divorce.
there's a lot of what not to do, actually,
Okay, let's move
because
to that.
I think that as a dear friend, you want to help your friend, you want to offer support, you want to be helpful, and being helpful sometimes gets done in a not helpful way where you're offering advice that's unsolicited, or you're bad mouthing the spouse, or you're spreading rumors to try to rally support, or to or to I mean the bad or to like riling your friend up to go for the meanest, baddest lawyer, and take everything you can and open a separate bank account and take the money. And there are all kinds of terrible advice that people are tempted to give. Um, People who've been through bad divorces kind of make the assumption that all divorces have to be that way, and they don't. So that's a risk, that they'll be giving destructive, not productive advice.
We see that a lot.
Yeah, it's the Greek chorus.
The
Um,
Greek chorus.
yeah,
I had a client whose friend, trying to be helpful, sent an email to all the other friends about what a terrible, like, she had been the confidant of this person's marriage, and sent an email to all their mutual friends saying, "You might not have known this, but this person was married to a real jerk, and these are all the things that he did during their marriage, and we need to support her now." Well, it didn't really help the person who was getting divorced. It eventually got back to her spouse, her soon-to-be ex, that this was going around. So spreading rumors, I mean, it might have been all true. It probably was true, but was it really helpful to do something like that? Because it just caused more problems.
right.
And I heard about it, through the lawyer. For the so it be careful with who, really don't spread the rumors. Don't just be very focused on your friend. You don't have to rally the troops, as you say. It's really probably not going to be helpful. Rally the troops to help provide babysitting or meals or distractions or group activities, do something like that, but not to talk about how terrible the ex was.
That's just
Um,
adding fuel to the fire. And if your hope is to help your friend get through the divorce and come out of it in as good shape as possible, it's it's doesn't help to add fuel to the fire
yeah.
by stoking those rumors or telling all of the horror stories, or digging for them. I mean, sometimes friends, it's kind of voyeuristic. They want to know all the terrible things that happened in the marriage, and or all the things that were wrong with the spouse, or whatever the narrative is. And that just adds fuel to the fire. I think if you, as a friend, can ask yourself, how can I make this divorce easier for this person? You're going to That's going to guide you to do more helpful things.
Right. Asking, like, what happened during your marriage, maybe to make yourself feel better about, is your marriage really healthy? Compare and contrast. Maybe that's a little bit of what's going on. Or asking, what's the deal you're negotiating? How much support are you getting? Are you sure you're getting enough? All these things that make them feel doubtful about their decisions. So
Right.
you need to be supportive, or don't ask the questions. If you can't be supportive, don't ask. Right.
I don't think friends have a need to know the details of the divorce, the financial details, the settlement. I don't think friends have a need to know that. And I think it's intrusive for them to ask.
Yeah.
And they need to respect the privacy of the person going through the divorce. I think it's really unfair to pry into those kinds of the settlement details, and maybe also a little unfair to pry into the details of what went wrong in the marriage. I think that the issue is more, how can I support you emotionally? How can I how can I just be here to listen to you and make it okay for you to talk about your fears, your anxieties, um, what you have to look forward to. I think it's not helpful to say things like, "Oh, you'll find somebody better." It's not helpful to say, I knew from the beginning this guy was, or this lady was not going to work out. It's not helpful to try to be dismissive. It feels dismissive to people, those
Right,
kinds of
right.
comments. So
I
just,
never liked him. We always knew.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
not helpful. Hey, listeners, it's Andrea Vacca here, your host of a Better Divorce podcast. If you're looking for ways to navigate your divorce with less conflict and more cooperation, my free ebook, Divorce Without Court, A More Peaceful Solution, can help you do just that. Divorce Without Court shows you how to reach an agreement without court involvement, from understanding mediation and collaborative divorce to learning how to keep your divorce under your control. This book covers it all. You'll even find practical checklists and first steps to help you move forward and guide you through the process. With over 3 decades of experience in family law, I've helped countless couples and families achieve peaceful solutions. Divorce Without Court puts that knowledge in your hands. Whether you're just starting to think about ending your marriage or if you're already in the process, this free ebook will help you have a better divorce. Why wait? Click the link in the episode description to download Divorce Without Court, A More Peaceful Solution. Take control of your future and move forward in your divorce with confidence and composure. So something else that I think could be helpful, to go back to what could be helpful, is if you did have a better divorce than the average person, or you really did think that, if you look back on your own divorce and think, we ended up doing things right. My kids are okay. In hindsight, my ex and I have a decent relationship. You could share that information. You could share the process that you used. You could, if your friend is open to that information, like, do share good things that might help, but you don't have to, but not if it's how, my bulldog lawyer, that might not be best for everybody. But if you use the collaborative process or the mediation process and you had a kinder and gentler divorce and there were some tools you used, you should share that information, I would think. Or is there any risk to that as well? What do you think, Anne?
Well, I think it's helpful to ask permission to share. So, if you say, I have a friend who just went through a divorce and gosh, it seemed to go really smoothly. Can I share how she did it, or can I share what her experience was? I think that's helpful. I think if I'm the person going through the divorce and I'm full of rage, I might not want to hear that. That's why I think it's helpful to ask
Okay.
first. But if I'm in a place where I've expressed my rage and I'm dreading the impact on my children, and I just don't know, is there a way to do this that isn't going to wreck my kids, then I would be interested in hearing that story. So I think that I think people need to get the emotions out first. That's before they talk to lawyers, before they do anything, they need to process their feelings, all the deep feelings of fear and grief and anger and those feelings. And then they're going to be more open to thinking clearly about options, like how to do the divorce and how to communicate with their ex and what decisions they can make with a clear head. But they've got to get through the feelings first.
So if there is a therapist to provide information about, or a good book that you read, when you think the time is right, that's when you should be offering this information. Do that first before offering the lawyer, perhaps, and trying to figure out what process to use. How do you help manage your emotions and really process what's going on? Then you can make better decisions.
Yeah, that's right. Therapy is, obviously I'm a therapist. I encourage people to go to therapy, but if you're a good friend and you can handle your friend's feelings and let them cry and let them rant and whatever, then that is what being a good friend is about, I think, in that moment. And just kind of releasing those feelings, then people get a little bit of serotonin in their tears and they feel a little bit better. And then you can kind of shift the conversation to, well, let's talk about some ways to make this better. Let's talk about ways to make this process a little easier.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
the right time to help your friend think towards a better future or more hope for the future? How do you do that, and when should you think about doing that?
Again, I think when people are overwhelmed with feelings that are going to cloud everything, that's not the time. That can feel dismissive to say, well, just think about the future. Think about all those, those great guys you can date and what I mean, that's not going to go over well. But at some point, um, when people are feeling a little calmer, I think it is important to encourage people to think about what's the next chapter going to look like? What parts of you are you going to reclaim? Maybe parts of you that got lost in the marriage or that you gave up, compromised in the marriage. So, what can you reclaim? Are there interests and hobbies? I think when they're kids, one of the hardest things is sharing time, parenting time. So there's suddenly time where they don't have kids. And that's a great time to start exploring, more self-care, more interests, more hobbies, more social interactions. But I think that that's not something that's going to happen right away.
Right, right.
As a friend, though, so my one of the friends that really showed up for me during my divorce, which was 35 years ago, um, was someone who, whenever she and her husband went out to dinner and a movie, they called and said, "Do you want to join us?" And in those days, that was more often than people do that now, it seems like. But it was such a wonderful thing as a friend for her when I didn't have my children, that I could just have that kind of experience and feel like life was going to be okay, even though I was now parenting half time.
Right, right. So your kids were there, they were with their dad, but you were with your friends, and you could be an adult, and you could have normal conversations and laugh again and share a meal and just feel normal. Just feel like,
Yes.
like Anne, I
And
imagine.
and feel like I didn't need to be part of a couple to be acceptable.
Right.
And I think that's something that people going through divorce can really experience is they don't want to be a third wheel. They feel like they get excluded because they don't have a partner.
So how could so if you're a friend, if you have a friend going through divorce, don't assume that they like invite them in. See if
Yes,
if they want to spend time with you and your partner. Don't assume that they won't want to be a third wheel. Just like the person going through the divorce shouldn't assume they are a third wheel. So ask, ask,
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
Or you can invite the couple to spend time with you. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, just find ways to get out and be together. Um,
I
so
think people going through divorce have a harder time reaching out because they're, especially in the early stages when they're so overwhelmed with their own emotions, they might assume people don't want to be around them. There's the stigma, they might be put off by that, and feel like they're contaminated in some way because they're going through the divorce, which is pretty awful. People who are going through divorce very often have a hard time reaching out, especially in the early stages, because they're overwhelmed and they may assume that people don't want to be around them, especially if they're depressed or if because they're single, they're the third wheel. For whatever reasons, they make assumptions. So a good friend reaching out in those days is so important. So be the friend that reaches out when your friend it doesn't feel capable of doing that.
don't take it personally when they say no, thank you. I want to stay home alone tonight, because that might be what you hear. But don't give up.
Right.
Try
Exactly.
again.
Exactly.
Um, yeah. Well, I is there anything else that we didn't cover that you'd want somebody to know to be a good friend to do or not to do or to think about as they try to help another person going through divorce?
Don't abandon them. Don't abandon your friend during a hard time. Be that friend that, you find out who your friends are when you've got something serious in your life. And divorce is that rainy day. It's that serious thing that happens. Be the friend that shows up.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Anne. And I end each podcast with my better divorce tip. Is there one you have to offer us today?
I tell every single client that arguing is expensive. That's my tip. Don't argue. Figure out how to, this is again about processing your emotions before you make the big decisions. Because when you're sitting in front of professionals and you decide to have, that's the time to have the argument with your spouse, it's expensive. And even arguing outside of the professionals and bringing that to the professionals will raise the cost. So learn the communication skills you need to negotiate and express yourself well and keep the arguing to a minimum. It's better for you and it's better for your family. It's better for the children.
It's a great point. And if I can add something, make sure you're hiring professionals who don't argue for the sake of arguing, right? Because that can be really, really expensive and you have no control over it.
Yeah.
So make sure if you're trying to keep things calmer and not raise emotions and make things worse, hire attorneys in particular who are going to follow that and model that same behavior.
Yep, that's a perfect point.
Okay. All right. So how can somebody find you?
Well, the truth is I've retired. So I'm no longer seeing clients. Of course, my book is still out there and I'll still be writing, but I'm spending time with my 6 grandchildren. I have one on the way within the next month or so, and I'm not seeing clients anymore.
Oh, well, I didn't even know that. So, well, congratulations on your semi-retirement. You're still writing for Psychology Today, so people can find your wonderful articles there.
And I do respond to emails. People contact me through Psychology Today, and through my website. And so I do respond to emails.
Okay.
Cases.
And your book is still out there. So, yes. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming back on A Better Divorce podcast, Anne. Really appreciate it. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please like and subscribe. This will help others seeking a better divorce to find us. This has been another episode of A Better Divorce podcast, and we'll see you next time. You've been tuning in to another episode of A Better Divorce podcast with Andrea Vacca. Thank you for subscribing, leaving your positive comments and reviews, and sharing the show with others. You can watch episodes at vaccalaw.com, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And you can listen through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. Bye for now, and remember, you can have a better divorce.